In this video, I'm going to be explaining why I should always go for it on 4th and 1. Always. Why teams, don't want to do it. And why, 4th and 1, you should always go for it no matter what. But when going for it in another spot would be more acceptable. Because if you're deep in your own territory, personally, unless it's 4th and 1 or 4th and inches, you don't go for it. And I know what you might be thinking. Going for it on 4th and 1 at your own 10-yard line is foolish. And I get that you think it's foolish because, it kind of is foolish. But I still think it should be attempted. Your chances of converting a 4th and 1 are usually in the 70%. So you have around a 70% chance of continuing the drive. Obviously, if you fail to convert, as in the quarterback gets sacked, the pass comes incomplete, or the run gets stuffed, then you're screwed, and they get the ball at their own 10-yard line. This does somewhat depend on your red zone defense as to whether or not you can hold them to a field goal or get a touchdown, or maybe get lucky and the ball gets fumbled or intercepted into the end zone for a touchback, or to give you the ball back. Another reason why I don't think punting in a 4th and 1 scenario, is a good idea, is because they can pressure the punter and then block the punt. And obviously, if that happens, they're getting very good field position anyway. Anyway. And there's a lot of pressure on the punter. If you're facing like a 4th down scenario and you're your own 1 or 2 or 3 yard line, the optimal strategy is actually an interesting one, but it's basically take the intentional safety, and even though they get 2 points, you get to kick from your own 20-yard line, so it sort of lessens the chance that they can get a good drive off of it. And I know what you might be thinking, then why was I deeply criticizing Eagles-Bucks? First of all, the line of scrimmage in that case was at the 14-yard line, so there was no reason why Hurts had to back up to his own end zone. That was an intentional grounding penalty, and we all knew that the Eagles' defense was so bad that if the Bucks were allowed to get the ball, again, they would make it a 2, potentially even 3-score game if they wanted to go for the 2-point conversion. Which, if I was Todd Bowles, I would have instructed my players to do that and make it a 26-9 ball game, so that's a 3-possession game. But yeah, this is different. It's when you're so deep in your own territory that going for the safety is the optimal strategy. The Patriots once used that in a game against the Broncos, and it helped them win. It also worked in the Super Bowl between the Niners and the Ravens, when the Ravens used a strategy to win the game. Another case where this worked was in the Week 18 game between the Texans and the Colts. The Texans did not have enough time to simply run down the clock because the Colts had multiple timeouts left. So they chose to do short runs, and with the fear of having to punt the ball away, they didn't want to do that, so they instructed their punter to kill as much time in the end zone as possible. Now, because the punter was being incredibly careless, he wound up stepping out of bounds with 1 second left. Obviously, the goal was to kill all 8 seconds. But what that did was that they got to kick off, and that's a good punter. He was able to send the ball on a 67-yard kickoff and land the ball at the Indianapolis 13, meaning that the Colts had 87 yards to go, and they only had 1 play to do it. They tried a bunch of laterals, but one of them got intercepted, which a lateral interception counts as a fumble, which ended the game and allowed the Texans to win. That was a good use of the strategy because you couldn't afford giving up the ball on 4th down after you just went to the 4th and 1 to pretty much seal the victory. But you couldn't afford to give the ball back to the Colts at your own, 15-yard line, because they'd score a touchdown and you only had a 23-17 lead. So going for the safety, even though it meant that the game was 23-19, it was a safer strategy because the chances of them getting a punt return touchdown were low, especially if you have that many defenders there. Because trust me, the defenders are going to be over everyone. And even if you get a penalty and it's, 15 yards plus one untimed down, what can they do with it? Plus, the Texans were lucky they're up 6 points, not say 5 or 4, because a field goal, following the safety, would not be enough to win the game for the Colts. But that's that. That's why, I think that's why about my safety thing. But yeah, 4th and 1 at the 10-yard line. Your own 10-yard line, go for it. Because yes, the pass can fall incomplete or you get stuffed short of the 1-yard line. And they have excellent field position. But if you get it, you can keep the drive alive. And if you have to punt later on, you're punting in a more favorable position. The punt average in the NFL about 40 yards. And then when it's a safety, they kick it off. So it's going to go farther because they can use a tee. A punt on average is going to travel only 40 yards. So let's say the ball is down to midfield. Depending on how good the kicker is on the other team, they could be potentially only 1 first down away from getting a field goal and scoring, and they have a good chance of scoring a touchdown. They're getting the ball at around midfield. They are going to have great field position. That's how the Bucs versus Eagles, punting teams were. The Eagles were always trapped within their own 15, whereas the Bucs, even though they kept getting 3 and out, they were actually advancing into Eagles territory before doing so. And when you punted that close, obviously, you have the fear of, what happens when it goes in the end zone for a touchback? But the Bucs were very good at preventing touchbacks. And we'll actually get to that later as to why you want to be, you really, when you're in the middle of the field, you need to be more aggressive going for it on 4th down. But as far as going for 4th and 1 goes, you always want to think about that. Now, we just talked about why you go for it on 4th and 1, even when you're deep in your own territory. Coaches will want to punt, but I recommend against this. I think it's safer to go for it. Well, not safer, but I think it's a better long-term strategy to go for it. Now, I would say don't go for it unless it's 1 yard. When you're at 4th down, until you get to around midfield, so around the 45-yard line. Why do you want to be more aggressive going for it at the 45-yard line? Because then you got to start worrying about touchbacks. Now, when you're pinned deep within your own territory, the touchback is not a concern. You'll honestly be lucky if you get the ball to the 40-yard line. But if you get a kickoff, if you punt it at your 45-yard line, yes, you can pin them deep. But you have to worry that if you have a good punter, they might not be able to control it, or it might bounce really hard on the ground, and it might go into the end zone for a touchback, giving the other team possession at their own 20-yard line. And you kind of don't want that. You'd rather the ball goes into that you can pin them deep. So when you're around midfield, yes, you probably punt in that spot, but you got to think about that a little bit. And once you cross into your opponent's territory, you have to be very careful. Yes, you can pin them deep. You can pin them within their own 5-yard line. However, and obviously when you pin that deep, there's a very good chance of a safety. However, gotta be careful because once you start to get to your opponent's 45 or your opponent's 40, once you're at your opponent's 40, you have to pretty much go for it unless it's like a 4th and 7. Even though your chances of converting aren't great. The other thing is that when you get the ball, turn the ball over, even if that happens, they're getting the ball at midfield. So it's not like they're that easily within scoring range. Actually, turning the ball over at midfield is the same as punting at your own 10-yard line pretty much. They're going to get the ball in pretty much the same spot. So again, go for it. I obviously, if it's a 4th and 8 or whatnot, and obviously in-game semantics matter too as to what's going on. But if you're that deep within your own territory, if you're that deep within your own territory, it's just something you got to think about. But when you're at midfield, you have to think about, obviously, the risk of a touchback if you punt. And yet, you can't really go for a field goal either. All the career highs you see on field goals, they either occur pretty much at the end of the half or at the end of the game. Because a 60-yard field goal, they might be able to do it, but you have to, but you have to be very careful about it because it's a very high-risk play. So you don't do it normally. You only do it when time expires, so that pretty much the worst thing that happens is that the clock's at triple zeros anyway. And obviously, if you can't reach the end zone, then you have to go for a Hail Mary because the field goal could be returned for a touchdown if it comes up short. But short as in, it doesn't even make it into the end zone. Because once it makes it into the end zone, it has to go well short in order for that to happen. And now once you're in field goal range, yes, when you face 4th and 2 or 4th and 3 or whatnot, usually it's the proper strategy to take the 3 points and go. 4th and 1 though, that's not a good time to be accepting 3 points when you can keep the drive alive, especially when you get very close to the goal line. And if you're close enough and you go for it on 4th and 1 and you fail, then they're pinned so deep in their own territory that safeties become a concern again. When the Bucs, I think, intercepted the Eagles at the 1-yard line in the regular season game, the Eagles were then able to get safety on them because they were pinned so far deep and they had to go into the end zone where they then got tackled. And the Eagles were then off of that able to kick a field goal. So, yeah, that's why. That's basically why.